It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And so we feel disappointments, and pretty soon we shut down, and we pull back, we withdraw, and we strategize, and we figure, and man, it's rampant.
It's hard to get back in our bodies.
Well, it is, and it comes in a lot. I mean, head tripping is only one way of bypassing. The bliss trip, I spent a lot of time in Northern California hanging out with bliss trippers, and
Bliss
you mean the denial trippers?
well, there's those too, but the
Yeah.
ones that always seem so happy, and they talk a lot about forgiveness, but if you look really closely in their
They don't
eyes, they're
forgive,
still holding
yeah.
anger.
Yes, they're smiling, but underneath they're
those are the
seething.
bypassers.
Well, we've called it spiritual bypassing, and we call it premature transcendence
Yeah.
syndrome, the
Yeah.
desire to be
Yeah.
past where we are.
But
Yeah, it's all the same thing. It's all about, this is a survivalist world. We're not moving from authenticity yet, and survivalist vibration is uncomfortable and painful. We don't know how to nourish, and Barnett's right. It starts at the very beginning, and then we find various mechanisms to get out of here. And
Well, let's talk about what's going on with you and
Yeah.
with us. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll share very frankly that I am discovering that I live in a body. I am discovering that I almost never breathe, and when I breathe, it's very shallow.
yeah,
And that I want to take up the least amount of space as possible, and that when any sort of challenge comes up, no matter how mundane, no matter how trivial, I hold my breath. I
Yeah.
stop breathing. And
Yeah.
this is only just now, after almost 60 years,
yeah,
becoming very, very obvious to me. And my capacity to let in a full breath of air requires, I'm developing the capacity to do that. My ribs don't just float out naturally. It's an effort
yeah.
to be in my body and to be grounded and to feel the aliveness and the tingling and the sense of what it is to be in flesh in the
Yeah.
world.
Beautifully worded. Yeah.
So I know that this is something that is near and dear to your own work, because you speak about bringing spirit into the world, which means first through not only into the mind but into the body. How do you go about doing it practically?
Well, I feel real challenged right now by this. I mean, I spent a lot of years doing bioenergetics and working with Alexander Lowen and finding my way back into that, understanding where I shallowed, understanding where the musculature was held, beginning to unravel what the emotional material that sourced that patterning was. And now that I'm writing and running a business and finishing a film and all of these things, be careful what you wish for, I'm falling right back into my old patterns. I'm becoming a head tripper. I know that by working from purpose, by like really honoring purpose that feels true, enheartened and true, that it always on some level keeps me moving from the right place, even with my mindy nature. But I have a hard time now managing all of these realities without relying on my brain.
It's such a fine line between using the brain as a messenger.
Yeah,
Here's data. There's a car hurtling along 60 miles an hour, 3.5 feet to your left.
yeah,
And then a whole bunch of inferences that the brain just sort of, we allowed it to co-opt the job of all of a sudden this has meanings, and he's out to get me. And
Well,
there's
that starts off defensive. I mean, we have to put things in their place so that we feel safe in the world, and then we realize we've got everything bound so tightly, and we're living in the construct,
just
in
spins
the constriction
out, spins
of that.
and spins and spins.
Yeah.
And we've built an entire world about it. But you say on your site, I noticed a little thing that jumped out about feeling God, and
not thinking God, right?
not thinking God. Thinking is the language of the mind,
Yeah.
and feeling is the language of the body.
Yeah,
And so much of the time, Freeman says to me, what are you thinking? Or what are you feeling? And I'll say, I'm feeling like she should have done this, and she should, this whole story unwinds.
It does.
As opposed to he'll say, take a breath and actually, what are you feeling?
yeah,
And we
I'm
both
feeling-
actually serve that for each other. We remind each other to breathe.
We breathe. And we remind each other that there is a different intelligence than a mental intelligence, which is beautiful and good and true, that there's also a body intelligence, and its language is feelings. And the feelings are not constructs of feelings that we mentalize. They're feelings that occur in the body. I have jitteriness. I have a certain kind of unsettled feeling. I'm tense across the chest. I'm cold in my hands. I don't feel connected to my feet. Those are feelings.
And even the language, and I want to go right to what Barnett was talking about, the feeling God, or here's the language I like, the sensing God. I have a sense of it, versus, because I'm with you both, that these are these abstractions that I like to ponder, and I got very good at, and I got rewarded for. I mean, truly, in our education system, the ability to be, crafty and clever and good with words served me. But in my life, it has very quickly become a distraction. So the sensing of God. Let's jump in and talk about that, Jeff.
Well, I don't really make a distinction between my spiritual life and my emotional life. I've never understood spirituality independent of that. I use the term "sell your soul," C-E-L-L your soul, because for me, repressed emotions were always unactualized spiritual lessons. The only way I seemed to grow in my spirituality, expand my container, was through my interface with my material. So
through feeling those emotional states
and working out the issues. I don't understand what the grist for the karmic mill is. Like, what's the karmic field if not the emotional body for spiritual expansion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we keep mind tripping it, and it stays in the cells, and we never release it. We never feel it. We never release it. It keeps coming at us.
Absolutely. And so so then the only way we can grow in our spirituality is through some relationship to our cognitive processes, and that starts to get mistaken for spiritual growth. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So when I fall back into my patterns, when I constrict in relation, I have a hardcore abandonment issue, like haunting abandonment issue, and it's in the cells of my being. And to the extent that I can hold the space for that trigger when it comes, not act out in relation to it, and breathe into it and remember that I have a body, I feel like I'm maturing in my spirituality. Spirituality just means reality to me. It means I'm holding the space for more of reality without pulling away from it. And when I fall back into the pattern, I feel completely like I've gone back to where I was in my spirituality in my early 20s.
Reactive, sort of a reactive spirituality. Make things happen.
And usually a desire to control it or fix it or whatever.
Yeah.
The interesting part, paradoxically, is that these pieces that we've dragged along as our problems. For me, I was too sensitive, right? I'm the guy who spent his entire life trying to be tough enough to grow up in the avenues in San Francisco and survive, and then realize that was my greatest gift. So these ways in to what Barnett referred to earlier, these capacities, whether it's capacities for intimacy or capacities for imagination beyond what we've talked a lot, and you haven't been here, Jeff, but about structured imagination, how even what was called creativity so often is just a repurposing of other people's ideas and other people's movies and so forth.
Yep.
But to really wander into the unknown, to get out beyond the reservation and sort of that space of very uncomfortable space often where we are expanding our capacities. So often that occurs in relationship to our challenges. You're talking about abandonment. That takes you deeper if you have a relationship with it, right?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, it takes some time to recognize the gifts of these challenges. I mean, for me, sacred purpose isn't just these great callings. It's not to become Oprah Winfrey. It exists in relation to all of these aspects, emotional materials, key relational experiences. All of this stuff is the grist for my expansion. And for me to pull out of that and only look on the positive stuff, like, the purpose that wakes me up every morning, the book that absolutely has to be written, is a very linear experience of spiritual expansion, and just for example, what Barnett was talking about, for example, today I got in the car and I have a business and I have to do business and I'm on the phone in the car and I'm completely head tripping, and I know that when I'm in that state, everything feels so tiny,
and of course, constricts.
Except the anxiety which comes, because when things are that, it's like after you get a massage and you open and everything starts to look more unified, and it's the exact same experience. Everything looks small, and then everything starts to look frightening. So I hear the unconscious media message about the next recession, and I'm buying into it, and I'm feeling it, and then I'm going even deeper into my mind because I don't want to breathe into the sensations of poverty consciousness in my body. And
we just went there. It's hysterical you brought that up. We just put a video up about it because Barnett and I just went there. This was like, I guess, last week when the crash occurred, the 2 days in a row of the, and we both spun out like simultaneously. That's hysterical. Beautiful.
So deep.
Double barrel, double triggered.
That's right.
So
2 for the price of 1.
But you can see the temptation of people like Tolle talking about getting away from the pain body. You know, the problem is they're talking about it as a model for enlightenment rather than as a tool. And if we go too far, it becomes sort of self-avoidance masquerading as enlightenment.